Happy Wednesday, everybody. My name's Aaron Conant. I'm the co-founder, managing director, chief digital strategist, whatever it might be here at BWG Connect, a giant networking knowledge sharing group. I spend my time either moderating events like this or small format dinners that we do across the country. If you'd like to be part of those, just let us know. We're in Chicago next week on the B2B side. And then the following week, we're in Midtown with our own full day event. Just let us know. More than happy to shoot you an invite. In my conversations I'm having just strategy sessions with brands, it's all around, hey, what are your biggest pain points? What are you trying to solve for? And what are your biggest questions? And with those, we get the topics for these, but we also get connected through those brands. We say, hey, who's working for you and who's not? And when the same people come up over and over again, those are the people we ask on to allow us to pick their brains for a while. And in this case, it's Jordan Brannon from Coalition Technologies, longtime friend now. I mean, she's in e-com years, like multiple decades. But anyways, a couple things as we get started. You have questions along the way, drop them into the chat, drop them in the Q&A. We'll get as many answered as possible along the way. And other than that, we're starting 3 to 4 minutes after the hour. We're going to wrap with at least 3 to 4 minutes left in the hour. So make sure you have plenty of time to get on to your next meeting without being late. I think that's all the housekeeping items. Jordan, I'll kind of kick it over to you. If you want to do a brief intro on yourself and Coalition, that would be awesome. And then we'll kind of get into this, what comes next in search in 2024.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So name is Jordan Brannon, president, co-founder at Coalition Technologies. My brother and I jumped into e-commerce in the early 2000s, so decades is real for us, although it certainly feels like it's moving a little faster today than it was back in the, I think, 2003. So it definitely is a fast-paced thing.
It's really quick. It is funny you say decades now.
Yes,
Decades.
isn't that weird?
Over 20 years.
Yeah, my favorite line I've heard lately is it's a great insult for when it applies to me. So this is sort of a little bit of self-reflection, but I was born in the late 1900s. It just makes it sound like horse and buggies and things like that. So that's where I'm from. Early 2000s got into e-commerce and SEO and pay-per-click. We were building some drop shipping e-commerce stores, actually B2B focused, which was sort of odd because that's become a thing again. And then doing SEO and paid search to advertise them. We did that for almost a decade. And about the midway point, we started offering services to other e-commerce brands, building websites, doing the SEO work for them and doing pay-per-click, paid search specifically. This is even sort of before meta advertising was really even a thing. So we really had two things to pull on. And since then, we've been able to grow quite a bit. We're over 300 people now, full service agency, still really well known for our work in design and development for e-commerce brands. But we have a real keen eye for what it takes to succeed in SEO and pay-per-click as well. So that's us.
Awesome. So quick reminders, people have joined, you have questions, drop them into the chat or the Q&A and we'll tackle them. There's one in here right now. If you're seeing a big drop post-core update, what's the fix? I mean, are we going to, do you want to tackle that right away? I mean,
sure.
I think everybody would think the changes right now are at such a frenetic pace. It's kind of ridiculous. And
Yeah, I think so Google's message for anybody who experiences a core update fall off, it has been the same for the last year, and it's don't necessarily think you've done anything wrong, just understand that we may prefer something else. And it's a really sort of bad breakup message. It's like your significant other steps out on you for somebody else, and then they say, it's not you, it's me. But is it really me? And is it me versus the other person? What's happening there? We all have to have some therapy to unwind that. So I would say take sort of Google's advice with a grain of salt. If you did see a lot of strength pre-update, you were doing well in ranking, and then all of a sudden you saw a fall off. There's likely a pretty clear reason for that. Sometimes it's something that was really overvalued in Google's eyes pre-update is now devalued. And so you were doing really good SEO things, maybe not necessarily doing black hat SEO things, but you did see something that was sort of your one pillar of strength in your rankings has now lost a lot of value. You may need to go and find what a new pillar is. Doesn't mean you go back and you eliminate, the work you did. Maybe you're really focused on high quality content, internal linking. You did a lot of things well there, and now that content's been devalued in some way. You may not want to remove it, but you may want to look at, hey, how do I provide more broad base of stability for my SEO effort and address what Google is valuing right now. I will caveat that maybe quickly. If you got a manual notice, if you've been penalized and you're seeing sort of your domain disappear altogether, there's probably some more proactive steps that you would want to take to correct that. But that's, kind of more manual penalty specific and something that we'd be happy to provide some audit and some recommendations around. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I just put a note in there. Questions, drop in the chat or the Q&A. What about the pace at which the changes are taking place right now? That just, I mean, it's so fast. That's the reality. And maybe it's not, maybe this is just what I'm hearing from brands, but when you hear it over and over again, it seems to be pretty accurate trend when you've connected enough data points.
Yeah, last year and a half, I think we had done one back in the fall, and I'd already said, 2023 was, one of the more chaotic years in organic search. Certainly the paid search side of things is equally chaotic. Google is rolling out new AI assisted, supported products, settings, configurations, recommendations very frequently. The search results page is also changing. So I think there's certainly a lot of chaos. I think the big reason is probably, something we would point to AI and we'd point to privacy. So I think sort of those two challenges happening at once is really maybe a bit too much for Google to handle. Users are just sort of navigating along like they would have before, but Google is now trying to find ways to jump through some big hoops very quickly, and multi-billion dollars at risk. And so I think that's a challenge. If you think about sort of the typical search engine business, it's really not a good fit for what people want their AI tools to do. Google wants you to be clicking on ads, and people want AI tools to provide the right answer or right sequence of answers to them in that moment without necessarily seeing an ad. And so I think that's really a challenge. Google doesn't want to become just another display advertiser. You just look at ads alongside content. And so it's trying to find a way to push a user to interact with those ads and at the same time address sort of the need for an AI search tool.
Yeah, if we would just go down that road a little bit, because it is inherently different, right? It's this, somebody had said it like last year that, Google is a search engine and ChatGPT and what's being built in on the back end of all these browsers now are answer engines.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which, like you're saying, is Google wants you to scroll. They want you to see ads. They want to do all this, but you were just saying, it just rang a bell. Like, I just want the answer.
Yep. Yeah. I think we'll probably reach a point where we'll increasingly see sponsored answers as part of generative experiences. We see a little bit of that now already, but I think there's going to be an opportunity where you'll start to see a sponsor provided answer based on content that you've fed in. Either from your landing page or from your website, you basically will have some means of providing to Google your preferred answer to certain questions or certain search queries. And so that'll create sort of an opportunity where the AI response, I have AI response that looks really good, feels really good, but it's got the little ad symbol next to it. And I've got one that maybe is a little more organic. And so I think that'll be something that we'll probably see evolving. There's some complexities just in how AI and large language models work to get there, but I don't think we'll be too far off. I think that's something very realistically we'll see probably, that's a bit of a prediction from me. I would say probably this year, I wouldn't be surprised to see basically a sponsored LLM ad product, basically, where you're going to have Coalition's website or Amazon or some other's website. We're seeing a Google ad response that looks very much like an LLM, an answer engine, instead of just a search engine.
I would just pay for the free version.
Well, you'd be paying through those sponsored ads, so that's how they'd like to get back to you.
Yeah. I want to go, thanks for that. Like,
Sure.
it makes sense, right? I mean, they're going to monetize the ad sales. That's how they make money.
Yep.
So one of the biggest pain points that comes up is just the repetitive updates that come out from Google. Um, you know, any thoughts on this March helpful content update? Would love to
Yeah.
hear those. Those come up quite a bit.
Yeah, so there's always going to be a published cause, and then there's also going to be the unpublished cause with Google. If you've been following any of the lawsuit leaks that have been happening, they're not so much leaks. Google's been forced to disclose things about its algorithms because of privacy and anti-competitive lawsuits that it has in the US and in the EU. And so you're actually getting sort of insights behind the scenes. Emails are being published, laundry's being aired. And so the sort of published statement from Google is that this was really an effort to refine the quality of top ranking search results based on user queries. It's pretty vague. It doesn't really seem to match to reality. I think a lot of what was happening is there was some underlying systems that had been abused in the way that Google's algorithms were working that allowed unhelpful content to rank.
Hmm.
And so Google was trying to figure out how to solve those. We saw some targeting around parasitic content. So websites where you essentially could publish in a subdomain or subdirectory an article and it would borrow the main domain's authority. And as a result, you could rank. A good example of this is Forbes. Forbes.com has a very high value domain. But they've been very aggressive in selling sponsored placements that aren't necessarily fully disclosed in other sections of their site, either through like paid writing positions and things like that, Forbes experts and things like that, contributors. And I think that was becoming such a problem that Google had to take some response. And so we saw some of those big sites get hit already. And if not the whole site, at least the chunks of their site that were focused on that. We also are seeing, again, I think a lot of impact on sort of unpolished AI content. Way back last year, my brother and I both, we kind of came out in a company meeting and then in some of the content we produced, we just said, be really careful about how you're using AI content. We're going to get to a point where these LLMs are basically being trained on LLM content, and you're going to see sort of a death spiral in terms of the quality of content as we're regurgitating what was regurgitated, what was already regurgitated. And Google and other kind of content-dependent digital entities just won't be able to depend on that. That'll really devalue their product. And so we said Google will probably have some sort of negative penalty associated to that. Now, the business case for Google is tough, right? If you're an investor and you hear Google come out and say, we're against AI content, you're going to say, Google, go home, grandpa, you're drunk. You basically are, as an investor, you don't want to hear anybody saying AI content is bad. You want to hear proactive, we're leaning in, we're leading. And so I think that was part of what we're seeing is we looked at, we have about 500 different sites that we have active Search Console access to, either because we have support type engagements or we have active retainer work with. And really, the handful of sites we saw take a bath in the course of this update were really sites that had been pretty abusive in use of AI content against our recommendation. And it was pretty clear, page by page. And if it was widespread enough on the domain, it seemed to really impact that. So what I think is happening is I think Google is starting to find fingerprint markers for unedited or unoptimized AI content from prior LLM releases. So, overuse of certain words, over consistency in terms of sentence structure, paragraph structure. And it sees a pattern that looks like AI, and potentially when it sees that across enough pages, it may devalue that content and look for pages to promote that potentially have a better outcome. So again, I think a lot of it was about AI. Google's not going to come out and say that. It's going to call it unhelpful. But I think there is sort of a line to be drawn in there about the type of content that's being generated.
So what is the advice to brands around that content? Because consistently content is expensive
Yeah.
and need more of it than ever. And So what are you doing with brands that you're working with around AI content? Are you creating some, but just ultra vigilant in what you're doing? Are you not? I mean, you obviously you don't want to pull the current content and just say, "Hey, rewrite this, rewrite this, rewrite this," because then you're like you're saying the death spiral. Is it adding new prompt in? Is it plugging in brand guidelines? Like
Yeah, yeah.
everybody's got the
We
AI question right now and are sitting back saying, "What? What
yeah,
are some
we
ways to
are.
use it?"
I think what we would look at is there's a few thoughts. So one, we have active test sites. If we're going to experiment, we want to do our more aggressive experimentation on ourselves rather than on a client. We do have some clients where they've come to us and they really want to lean into AI strategies. As a business, they're maybe a bit more aggressive and more nimble. And so we are working with them on some tests we feel are, maybe a little bit more ready for commercial use. In all of those situations, really what we're focusing on, though, is can we make the AI content distinctive and unique from what is available elsewhere? And if I can't answer yes to that question, then it's probably not going to be a long-term success. Um, I will put an asterisk here. There's a lot of money to be made in the short term sometimes. So if you're not running a brand's domain and they need that brand to be successful through that domain in 10 years, and you're using microsites, you're using highly targeted, kind of direct response type, subdomains and things like that for some of your advertising, potentially some more scaled AI practices can work. Just understand that when Google catches up, that money mill potentially dies with it, and you'll have to make a decision about what to do there.
Um, Question pops in here. Are you using a third party? Thanks, Taylor, for shooting this in. Others, drop them in the chat or the Q&A. We'll get to them. Are you using a third party tool that attempts to detect and grade AI content? If yes, which one?
We actually use several, and we kind of are relying on several to help make that determination. I will also say that just in the effort to identify that AI content, if we are seeing a positive response, we are behaving as if it is AI content. We're not sort of approaching it like, well, maybe it's not. We'll publish it and find out later. We're really working on making sure that if AI content is detected, it is addressed. So we use CopyLeaks, ZeroGPT. We have our own in-house AI text classifier that actually pulls in a couple of those together. There's a few others that I know that the copy team uses, and that's been really helpful for us in avoiding, I think, some of the issues that we're seeing now with the helpful content update. I would, again, suggest using more than one, and I think there's a couple free ones out there that don't require commercial, licensing or SaaS payments. A lot of the big AI copy production tools now have offered their own AI detector, which is sort of funny. And so sometimes leveraging those on your own copy can be helpful. And again, if you see AI detection show up, edit, supplement, so that you're in a spot where that maybe is not coming. Because again, just you don't want to roll the dice.
Yeah. I love when the AI content generation company is doing its own policing, right? It's like,
Yeah,
catch me if you can, right? At the end of the day,
yeah,
crime does pay. That's kind of the story,
yeah.
right? Like,
Well, I mean, it's funny because you get some of them they're big. Google will never do anything against AI content. Here's our success story. Here's our success story. Here's our success story. And then at the same time, they're kind of sliding in these AI detection tools for you to use. And so it tells me that maybe they're a little more worried than they would let on publicly in sales and marketing material for sure.
what about on the impact side, for for e-commerce and D2C sites around content creation as a whole?
Yeah, I think there's probably a few different things that we're seeing from like a kind of, I guess, e-commerce content creation impact. One is I really would make sure that you are finding ways to blend user-generated content or expert-generated content in with sort of your AI strategies. Again, we're not opposed to AI, and AI can be really helpful in rephrasing, rewording, expanding the length of, or supplementing some great content. If you are just putting in a prompt and then just copying and pasting what's there, you're going to see and feel that impact, I think, more significantly than if you are really working it. So for us, we are seeing some efficiency gains in certain types of e-commerce content. So things like title tags, meta descriptions, generating lists of frequently asked questions about a particular product or product type, are all of those are really helpful. A lot of the AI tools, generative AI tools now, you can feed specific URLs to help surface summaries or help surface certain questions that you can then take and answer with a human, with short form video, with written content, and all of that can be really beneficial, I think, for brands where previously, if you wanted, a good example, so we love text on page as SEOs. We love it for pay-per-click too, because it helps bring up some of our quality scores. But you want that text on the page to be meaningful and valuable to that e-commerce conversion experience. So what drives that? Customer-generated questions and concerns are a great place to start. So pulling kind of common questions asked about a similar popular product on Amazon to your own, that gives me my FAQ list. Again, I can use AI to help do that. I can draft my initial response, have AI help polish or insert certain keywords that I want naturally in some of those, and then again, run that AI content detection, and you usually can be in a pretty good spot. So a lot of times we're really sort of looking at like, how does AI supplement, speed up certain steps in the process without actually being responsible for the final product that we're pushing live.
Awesome. Love it. So another question pops in here. Again, thanks everybody for sending these in. Just love getting these questions answered as well. Are there any near to far term developments in LLMs that could have a significant impact on digital marketing and Google's policies?
It's a great question. This is one of my favorite ones to puzzle over. We were really successful as an agency because we were early adopters of Shopify, of BigCommerce, of other SaaS platforms. We were very successful because we got into SEO and pay-per-click early. Again, I think early to sort of really building out email marketing campaigns and under having a digital analytics practice at scale. So being a little ahead of the game is really important for our success. I think, to me, the biggest question is really about hardware and sort of processing power and capabilities, because those, I think, are the biggest barriers to what happens next with LLMs. We get a lot of hallucinations. We get a lot of inaccuracy today, partially because of how LLMs have to work with the underlying hardware and how they have to treat those prompts and the data that they have available to respond to them. As you see improvements in memory, in underlying hardware, the ability to produce a timely response, I think you'll be able to get to a point of having much more personalized LLM type experiences, both on the brand side for digital marketing, but also on the consumer side as someone who's going to receive that. So I touched on this earlier. I thought later this year, I wouldn't be shocked to see some sort of sponsored search generative experience from Google, meaning I can go in as a free user on the front end, start to get my answers from the answer engine, like Aaron had said, and starting to see some of those responses being prompted by sponsors. And again, having the LLM be able to provide some sense of accuracy and reliability of that information, I think that's going to be pretty innovative. I think you'll also start to see a lot more, again, of that personalization side of things. I have my own llama. I have one of my computers is set up with its own version of Facebook's free OpenAI. I can't combine the two, I guess. It's open source AI. And so I think people will begin to see that show up in their devices or in some of the software they use. And I think that will really change how we begin to use AI and the type of experiences we have on digital marketing platforms.
Also, yeah, I was just thinking about even on the content side, the data, kind of, you're talking about the customers that you have and
Hmm.
the first party data that you're collecting,
Yeah.
and then the organization of it, where I think there's been this, uh, brands are really catching on that it's, for the longest time, get as much data as possible and collect all that data, but then realizing it's disparate, it's all over the place. And
Hmm.
now there's this focus on the data that we're bringing in, how are we organizing it so that we can use it? And whether, like you're saying, that's just the transactional first party, but it's also, what are the ratings? What are the reviews? What are the pain points for you and everything else? And then building that into a collective model of, or a data set that
Yeah.
you can drop an LLM onto to
Yeah,
create
I mean,
things.
if you think about like today, what drives a lot of our advertising is some sort of identity tracking and establishment, right? So I know Aaron's email address. I know Aaron's IP address. I know Aaron was logged in on Facebook and then navigated a bunch of these other sites. So I've got tracking pixels from a Meta that are firing across some of these things. Aaron's using Chrome. He's signed in on Chrome, so Google is also tracking that when he's on his iPhone. Apple is also tracking that. A lot of the privacy cookies exclude the hardware, right? So Apple is pretty actively tracking in spaces where each website is prompting. You have an opt-in that's just been set to be opted in on your Apple device. Same with your Android device. And so we now have this sort of identity package about people, which we really rely on. Those advertisers, though, can't hand that data off freely anymore, which is part of the challenge we see. I think that the interesting spot again for LLMs, if my Apple iPhone comes pre-built with some version of Siri, which is fully aware of my apps, of my browsing behavior, of my email consumption, of all of my content, and again, because I don't get a frequent cookie prompt from Apple about, hey, can we share your data? All of a sudden, I have my own little Siri version for me, which is my new identity that's been tracked and massaged. That has potentially a lot of generative AI opportunity. I can interact with my device almost like my personal AI assistant. It's able to consume content or data fed to it from advertisers. And all of a sudden, my digital experience really dramatically is changing, where again, my personal AI assistant really is helping to figure out which ads I need to see, which ones will be most effective in my particular moment. And so I think that's going to probably be a pretty big shift for us in terms of um, what happens next in digital marketing. It'll be really rooted in everybody comes to the web, comes to connectivity with some version of an AI identity, which is reflecting their browsing behavior and other things like that. And that's basically what's being sold to advertisers for the opportunity to market. Like I know all these things about Aaron, or you're letting me know all these things about Aaron. I'm now committing to you, Apple, all of this data about our products. I want you to surface that in front of Aaron at some point where that's relevant in his journey. I think, again, that'll be part of the evolution we see coming out of AI and how that changes our typical navigation experience. You're on mute, my man.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. You just had me thinking. It's the personal assistant slash gatekeeper.
Yep. Oh yeah.
And if Google can come out with that specific offering,
Yeah.
it's a game changer, because I think a lot of people, if it is right, if I can now just have complete voice interaction, right? If I don't have to type, if I can just interact, but that be the node for then the gatekeeper of what you're showing me and what I have.
Yeah. And frankly, I don't know that even like it's not just a voice search solution, because the voice thing is easy. Many of us have seen sort of the voice models that are out there, text to voice, and those are really quite authentic sounding. Um, we have one client that we're talking to right now who is doing sort of a kind of a personal relationship, clean, not adult content, but basically like you can have a best buddy who is an AI and it responds to you. Honestly, I think you're going to see that become the norm. And because, again, consumers just are not trained to block their hardware from tracking and sharing all of their tracking information with them. And now we're seeing so much emphasis on softwares having to do that and websites having to do that. Um, I think the hardware device providers, the operating systems, some of the core software solutions that we use, I think the identity that's being sold is the one that our AI has, and how brands can then market to that personal assistant so that it shows up in your life, really, especially with augmented reality. I think becoming probably more realistic in the near future too. I think you'll probably see some form of that where our personal AI assistants are being paid to advertise to us at timely moments.
Yeah. It's going to be that movie, Her,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's where you're going. So another question coming in, getting back to content. Are there other ways that you can measure the quality of your content?
Oh yeah. I would always say as a business, you have to look at the business objective. Is the content doing what I paid to have it do? Ranking is not, especially if we're talking about SEO, is not necessarily what you're paying for the content to do. Getting that additional micro conversion or conversion is really what you're paying for. And so seeing if it's effective in that is going to be really this, I would say, is the best source of truth is whether or not it's good quality content or poor content. One way to think about that is if it's really effective with search audiences, with SEO audiences, it's probably going to be really effective for an email marketing campaign, really effective in social media, really effective in paid. So try leveraging it across those. What's really effective in any of those other channels is likely to have some version of it which is effective in another channel. So kind of, learning from your high quality content that you see users responding to with the right commercial outcome is probably really important. I think certainly the metrics wise, you can look at engagement times, click-through rates, decreased bounce rates. Are they taking, again, those micro conversions? Are they willing to give you an email, willing to interact with the content in some way, a share or a like, some sort of saving behavior? Is there something like that that's happening as well? One of our clients who does more publishing has an event tracking on a copy button that they have on some of their content. And so there's sort of a opportunity for them to see when people are actually copying some of the content they're publishing to send to somebody else or share to somebody else. And that's one of the conversions that we can look at and we can track and use to establish whether that content is good quality content or not.
Awesome. I don't know if we can jump back to the SEO side of things
Yeah.
and the helpful content update that came out. How should brands be thinking about that? There's just a ton of questions on it right now.
Yeah, I think just in terms of your SEO strategy, after the helpful content update, now I would really be leaning towards that authenticity and user engagement focus. Part of the survey, or not the survey, but the lawsuit outcomes that we saw is that Google's actually really tracking what user data it gets from search results pages. And that's a factor in ranking. And so I think looking at ways where you are really making sure your content is a great destination for users and they're staying there. Think about that user experience. I think that's really key in your SEO strategy right now. If you think about sort of the AI search generative experiences, SGE experiences, Google's trying to provide that answer engine in their page. That's a really good ambition for you to have in yours. And that's a really helpful way of informing your SEO strategy. If I'm a user looking at a specific topic, what's the next question that I'm going to want? What types of content, is that a video or an image, a graphic, an interactive element? Is that what I'm looking for? Provide that.
SGE?
Yeah.
SGE? Can you
Yep.
just elaborate a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. SGE is a search generative experience. It's the label that Google's put on specific enhancements to its search results with generative AI. So some of you may have heard of Gemini, which is the actual kind of competitor to ChatGPT that Google has launched. SGE is sort of Gemini being applied to a search result. If you give me a second real quickly, I can maybe give an example. And I'll use one just because I was recently talking to someone in the BWG network, and I think I see them actually in the call participants here. So I will use them as an example. Give me a minute. All right, I'm going to share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Can you see, you should see Google search results there up, everybody. Aaron, you good with that?
Yep. Yep. Can see that.
Okay,
Yep.
so typical search results. This is my personal signed in session. So looks pretty normal.
Right.
Now, if I click over, this is a keyword that I might be looking for. Again, I'm picking on, I think, someone in the audience here. So my keyword maybe is what is a mineral sunscreen? Or as another example, best mineral sunscreen. You can kind of see sort of the search result page that happens when I actually enter that
Mhm.
particular keyword. Most of us are pretty familiar with some of these elements. So I've got my shopping ads up here at the top. I have some of my sponsored ads. Now, here is where I start to see sort of SGE beginning to show up. I've got this little insert here, get an AI answer for this search result. Now, this is coming right above the organic top ranking positions, right? So now I've got a couple of articles down here which are being at least interceded by the AI prompt. Now, kind of looking at a different example, I've got the AI answer just shows up for me. I did a search for mineral sunscreen. And now I've got an actual AI answer here for me. So instead of actually getting all of those ads, I've got a little bit here with the shopping section. But now I have my AI answer. It tells me what what mineral sunscreens are. They use titanium dioxide and zinc oxide. That doesn't sound super great. Unlike chemical sunscreens which absorb into the skin, when choosing a mineral sunscreen, you may want to consider things like SPF ingredients, texture, finish. Now you'll see over here, all of a sudden, some of the schema for some of these shopping results is being used to enhance these, what we call, again, search generative results. I've got good for sensitive skin. I have pricing. I have what website these are coming from. There's the AI summary over here, which has been generated. This isn't just a copy and paste from the website. This is basically the AI's interpretation of what's on that site for me. And then I also have other suggested queries over here with links to different pages as sort of sponsored content or organic content. Now down below, again, we're sort of suppressing the typical organic result. I've got follow-up questions that are prompted for me that lead me deeper into that SGE experience. And so now I'm starting to see, again, more and more content provided to me in the answer engine instead of in the search engine. So that's what SGE is.
So a really quick question, like how are the products chosen?
Yeah, so it's a mix of traditional SEO. So this is where SEO doesn't just go away. You want to look at Google's looking at what is the domain authority? What is the content of that particular page itself? You'll often see that some of the pages that are cited in SGE are also ones that are ranking a little further down. So in some ways, it's almost a chance where you could rank twice. However, there is often a lot of value placed on schema inside of those pages. So, how many reviews are there? What is the shipping time? What are the ingredients? What are sort of the inventory levels? All of these sort of things that you can mark up with schema that Google can then take as a data point and give to a generative AI can also be influential. And so having a really robust schema markup on top of the page authority, the content, the keyword optimization, all the things we normally do, also plays a role here pretty significantly.
Are we going to have, Jordan, you and I have done SEO calls for years now. Are we going to have SGE calls?
I think so. I mean, ultimately, we're getting, and you'll have probably be SGER, results optimization, something. There'll be Sergio is what we're going to go with as my new acronym for him. But yeah, I think this is SEO is fundamentally going to change, at least in the way that users consume your work as an SEO. So I think that'll be something we're really keen to is how do we make sure that our clients are well positioned in what comes next? We're also being a little more aggressive around, Bing strategy and some other things like that, where again, just the question marks, is Google going to be the dominant search engine? And where might people be searching in the future? And how do we rank there is also something I think that you really want your SEOs paying attention to.
Just keeps getting harder. Just keeps getting harder.
More fun, more fun.
But yeah, okay, more fun.
Like it's like parenting. It's always getting more fun.
Yeah, it's like you perpetually have a new first child as an infant, and you're a first time parent over and over and over again, and you're trying to apply learnings.
Yeah, I honestly I think there's probably the parenting analogy isn't probably a terrible one. A lot of it is the same, right? I think there's it just is that you have to make sure you're adapting what you did that worked before to the new child. Like, all kids benefit from attention and from care. The type of attention and what they want attention about and for is probably what changes. I'm speaking now as a parent who's gotten it right maybe once out of 3 times. So you kind of learn from that, but ultimately, like, each kid benefits from that time and attention. The challenge is that we often are giving that time and attention in the same way to different kids, different people. I think a lot of the SEO strategies of today will be very relevant tomorrow. You just have to think about how they're going to be surfaced in a new experience, how Google is going to index them, value them in this new experience. And I think that'll drive a lot of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to reshape the content you have on the page. Like, I
Oh,
want
yeah.
to get into like practical stuff. I mean, in my mind, if people are looking for answers to questions, right, like best Father's Day gift, building something in there that's going to show up that's advising. I mean,
Yeah. I
it's going
think,
to be very, very interesting. I don't know if you have like the what, how should people be thinking like practically. You just started my brain on this, and I'm now like 10 minutes into my SGE education. Like, you've obviously like thought about this way more. Like,
yeah,
what are like
yeah,
practical ways that people on the call are going to be like, yeah, I could do those things, or I at least need to start thinking about this.
yep. I would say, like, one, think about the things that you have in hand right now. So I think a lot of us, we get, actually, I was at a CMO conference earlier this week, and it was interesting just how many of the CMOs that I was talking to, senior executives, long histories, you know, great people, very talented people, they're just almost frozen by what may come next with AI and what, some of these things, these changes are, to the point where they're just not taking positive steps now. They're shopping for new AI tools. They're hunting for new platforms, new applications, new this, new that. And honestly, that's freezing them more than it's actually giving them a place to go. And the ones that are placing big bets, a lot of them are going to go south, right? They're betting on something that's really not well understood. So I think from a practical standpoint, I would really focus in on what we know about how search works today, how LLMs work today and generative AI tools work today, and how people are beginning to address those. You called this out. People are beginning to want to have an answer engine. I think we have to be watching the places that they can go for those answer engine type experiences. I honestly don't think that ChatGPT on its own is going to have sort of a lot of staying power. I think it's going to have strength until somebody with the hardware is able to do better. Google's kind of putzed things up with Gemini. Apple is so far behind and is just now sort of trying to come up to speed. I think if one of those two players really does generative AI experiences well integrated into the hardware, ChatGPT could sort of very quickly fade into our rearview mirror because we're looking for that sort of integrated experience. Now, those tools, again, I think schema markup on your product pages, schema markup on content pages that you're creating about specific topics are going to be super valuable. You want that built into your templates and your code. Again, you want these pages to be answer engines into themselves. So don't force people to navigate outside of those pages. Make as seamless a navigation as possible inside of that page. Think about your commerce experiences, less about your typical PDP and how do I integrate all of the content that I might, again, look for as an answer engine into that page. How do I make that experience more seamless, more smooth, faster? How do I get someone to be really confident that they can make a purchase here based on the answers we've provided them? I think those types of strategies, again, you can do today. They don't require a new e-commerce platform. They don't require a big new third-party tool purchase. and they may just require a little bit of a redesign or supplementing some of what you've already done to be prepared for. Good SEO on top of that, I think, will start to inform the more successful SGE winners. So I think really solid just underlying SEO work today. Don't get too caught up in spinning up a ton of AI content. Don't lose sight of how links fit into the scheme of SEO. Also, make sure that you're integrating SEO strategies across your different marketing channels. So many brands miss out on how social can benefit your SEO, or don't think about how some of their things like review prompts, again, potentially benefit their SEO. Do that. And I think you'll be in a really good spot where this sort of AI evolution is more fluid for you, and you're able to jog, and you don't have to sprint and make big leaps of faith along the way.
Do you kind of, I think maybe the last question, because we're getting to the end here.
Hmm.
If other people have questions, drop them in the chat or the Q&A. What thoughts around third-party cookies, Google pushing it out again, but even with iOS, like they're only around for 7 days anyways. If there's impacts, your thoughts around that, and what about that in SGE? I'm just kind of throwing it out there because
Yeah.
everybody's still
Yep.
kind of shaking their head with the third-party cookie thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one, really understand ways of establishing attribution with less specific insights. So a lot of brands have historically undervalued SEO. If you were to go to their Google Analytics instance and look at the dollars that were coming in through organic search today, it's probably for most of them 30 to 50%. And proportionally, in terms of marketing spend, they are spending fractions of that compared to like what they're doing with paid search, ad spend, management fees. Same with even email. People will spend more in those categories for less revenue. So I would say, one, you really need to understand what is sort of the right mix, what is the current mix of channels that are driving revenue, traffic, things that are of value to you today. And start to track those changes. I don't know that Google Analytics is quite the solution it used to be for that. So some custom dashboards with Looker or something like that can be helpful, just to give you some visualization. Setting up some custom reports in Google Analytics, we can help with that. That's something we can do for free. That can be really helpful in just sort of understanding and tracking that behavior over time. Starting to accrue data from multiple sources into a data warehouse. And then having some data visualization tools where I can start to see, like, I know I'm getting roughly this amount of traffic from paid search. I'm getting this much from email, roughly. I'm getting this much from my SMS campaigns, roughly. And then I have this a little bit more of a gray area. I know I'm getting this much traffic from Google Organic, but I just don't know what sort of the other traffic I'm seeing or direct traffic I'm seeing, where that's coming from. You can start to do some basic investigative work to get a pretty good formula for where that's coming from. I do think segmented content strategies are going to be a big part of how we address sort of loss of cookie signal. So knowing that a particular customer came to your site because of the page they landed on, because of the coupon code they used, because of this, because of that, it's really sort of creates interesting opportunities for some extra tracking. I saw an interesting test being done where a brand was doing product exclusive launches for specific marketing channels as a way of starting to evaluate what returning traffic was driven by what channel. And so again, being creative, I think, about some of the ways you're accumulating zero-party, first-party data and then making that actionable, I think will be really key. Google will keep pushing off, I think, this cookie thing as long as they can. Until they feel like they've got some solidity to their AI experience, SGE, their advertising technology, because right now I think they feel very insecure. And so I think that's part of the reason we keep seeing that being pushed off.
Yeah, I totally agree. They're pushing it off because they know if that completely goes away and nobody's prepped for it, the
Yep. Yeah,
performance is just going to tank, and then people
yep.
are going to push money to other avenues that's basically guaranteed, return on ad
Yep.
spend. That's what they're going to do.
Yep. Yep.
Anything we didn't get to today that you thought, as we're in the last couple minutes here?
I'm just thinking out loud. I would start to think about entity marketing. And this is not like it's not like a novel concept necessarily, but I think in e-commerce it's something we maybe do less of. Uh, we often, as digital marketers, we're very bottom of funnel focused, and so we're not necessarily prioritizing how to surface certain entities related to our brands outside of just our website. So, who are the influencers you can own or create? Is there a particular product which can be a banner product and can become its own entity online? You can do collaborations around, you can build some social following. Timberland boots is a good example with their classic boot. It is an entity unto itself digitally. Everybody, you say that sort of Timberland boot, we all have that same caramel. We have the form in our mind. It comes out pretty clearly. And a lot of brands that have good staying power have a product where digitally they have built an entity around that. And so entities are basically a thing that a human being sort of conceptually knows is the same thing, and it can exist or be talked about in a lot of different forums and channels. And people will always still be sort of thinking that same things. Like Aaron, as an example, your entity might be your LinkedIn profile, your X profile, the content you're producing there, your blog, your Reddit profile. All of those things could be Aaron's entity. And Google is able to connect the dots. Success in one potentially means that content elsewhere becomes more successful as well. And again, starts to feed back into some of those generative AI experiences people will have. So that's one I would really be dialing in on right now.
Yeah. Awesome. I do not see any more questions coming in the chat or the Q&A. Everybody, thanks for the great questions though. Jordan, thanks for your time today. I encourage if you have any follow-up questions in this space, Jordan's probably the best person to talk to. More than happy to make that connection across the board. I mean, I'll send you a follow-up email as well. I'd love to chat with everybody that's on the line today, see other things that are popping up across the landscape, whether they're pain points or new partners or new tech. Always like to stay on the cutting edge of all that stuff. So look for a follow-up email from me. And with that, we're going to wrap this one up. Thanks again, Jordan. You guys are awesome. Everybody take care, stay safe, and look forward to having you on a future event.
Bye, everyone.
All righty.